Chris? Chris? I have no clue. I don't have any staff
Once again,
anymore,
value,
so I
the
don't,
value.
they don't tell me this stuff.
The value.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, we don't pay you to do that. Why don't you still do it anyway, right? Yeah.
Push my button.
Push my buttons. Max, I already pushed enough buttons, right?
Let's see, read this. It being 5:30, and I'm 5:31 says my right hand here. Call the, I don't even know the date, October 22nd meeting of the Franklin Finance Committee to order. Nancy, we're gonna redo the swearing in of the three new members.
Perfect. I'm going to ask you all to rise if you wouldn't mind, and you're going to raise your right hand. Do you want to be re-sworn in? Good. Stand up. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully and impartially perform the duties incumbent upon you as a member of the Finance Committee to the best of your ability, so help you God?
I do.
Wonderful. You may proceed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy.
What a mic drop.
Was that quick enough for you, Mr. Conley?
Thought there was gonna be a-
Thank you.
Jamie, can I take 3 minutes just to have the new members introduce themselves to the rest of
Yep.
us? We'll start down here. Name and kind of what you do and quickly.
Yeah. John Barnes, I worked in finance and finance-related fields for the past 15 or so years. So excited to join the committee and help out the town.
That's good, welcome. Our Shannon.
Oh, I thought we were just gonna go this way, but,
He's just,
Shannon Nealon, I'd just like to know what's going on. So,
Ooh, that was quick. What do you do?
I'm an attorney.
So if we have legal
Who likes to know
questions,
what's
we don't
going
have
on?
Mark, we got her. Right.
Ryan Livornia, I work at Accenture Consulting, do mostly financial analysis for large teams, so sounds kind of like a large team, hopefully. So this felt like a good fit, wanted to get a little more involved after some of the recent town happenings. So here I am.
the mic, just to,
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, you got, and the other thing is you gotta talk into the microphone, because if you don't, no one at home can hear you, and I can't, when I rewatch it, can't hear you either.
Do we have Zoom going?
Citizens' comment. I know, acknowledging we have two. The reason we're rushing is that we have the town council meeting, so we gotta kinda be out of here by like 6:45. And I know Tim will talk for, his plan is several hours. So, but citizens' comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mark Minichelli, 31 Longfellow Drive. The reason I'm here tonight to speak with you has to do with the 444 East Central Street Friendly 40B project. You've probably aware of it and heard about it. One of the things that I'd like to request of you is your help to sort of endorse or certify some numbers, some financial aspects of doing that project. I'm going to read a few comments from a letter that Gino Carlucci sent to Bruce Hunchard, the chair of the ZBA, earlier this week about these projects. So the 444 East Central Street parcel is approximately 15 acres. And the reason that I'd like to do this is because there have been many public comments about how much financial burden a project like this would put on the town of Franklin. And Gino and I and others in the Bend for Franklin organization don't buy into that. So Gino has done some analysis. The 444 East Central Street is approximately a parcel of 15 acres. If you compare that to the Redgate Lane neighborhood, there's 20 lots there that cover about 15.3 acres. Station 117 on Dean Avenue is probably the closest comp to what would be the 444 East Central Street project. It's 257 apartments compared to the 264 that are proposed. And I'm going to give you a copy of this letter, Mr. Chairman, so that you can distribute if you'd like to. The total assessed value on the 20 properties on Redgate Lane is about $17.5 million, generates about $203,000 a year in tax revenues. In contrast, and the town, of course, bears full responsibility for maintaining the public road and the associated infrastructure, plowing, sanding the streets, drainage, et cetera. In contrast, the comp to 444, the closest one we have, the Station 117 site, is assessed at $75 million, generates approximately $875,000 a year in revenues, and which is over 4 times what it probably would be if it was large lot, single-family homes, similar to what's on Redgate Lane. The town does not need to maintain that infrastructure. So I wonder if you think it's within your purview to look at questions like this, projects like this, and to create some sort of a financial analysis, or at least critique and endorse the financial analysis that Gino has done, to try to bring some clarity to other organizations within the town infrastructure, to help decide whether a project is going to be a net financial benefit or drain for the town of Franklin. Thank you. I'm going to give you a copy of
I
this.
have already begun that process. Thank you.
If I could ask, you're doing the analysis, or you're going to review the analysis that someone else is doing?
No, I'm actually going to do one myself that factors in like how many school kids and that kind of stuff.
Excellent. Thank you.
Steve Sherlock, 13 Magnolia Drive, Community Information Director for Franklin Matters, Franklin Public Radio. So this is a voting related but with a financial impact public service announcement. Please know who you are voting for and understand why you are voting for them. With many of the candidates' help, I prepared 24 videos of our conversations to share with the community. They're on YouTube, available via podcast apps. Franklin TV has a schedule for broadcasting them as well. All you need to do is to gather the info to cast your informed ballot on or before November 4th at the high school. So let's create a scenario. Candidate gets on the ballot, stops actively campaigning. Voters cast enough votes to enable that candidate to be one of the top 9 for the town council. The candidate in that scenario doesn't step up to fulfill the commitment that they think and they took when they started the process by taking the papers out. Realistically, that could happen with any of the top 9. Folks may think, oh, just take the next one. But technically, per town charter, that circumstance would kick off a special election to be run within 90 days to fulfill the requirements of the candidate who technically would have resigned. So, elections cost money, and we have enough of a budget issue as it is. We don't need to add to it with this circumstance. So my one ask, please know who you are voting for and consider why you are voting for those candidates. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Max?
Max Marangello, 127 Central Park Terrace. Just a quick comment. I noticed in the minutes that Finance Committee Member Riley was talking about the Davis Thayer project, and I haven't heard any updates since then, so I just wanted to ask you to keep pushing on that issue. Thanks. And I did have some further comments on the town administrator forecast, but I'll bring that up then. Thanks.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, really quickly.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit ambiguous, but it says on here, nothing herein shall prevent the town staff from correcting a statement of misfact. I don't want to say Mr. Minichelli is stating something of misfact, but I just feel like for the clarity, because I think one of the issues with citizen comments we've had is that Questions get asked that are good questions. I think Mark has asked a good question and made some good points. But I just want to clarify, and this has been very difficult in the way that citizen comments has been structured in both the rules of procedure for the council, which was mirrored on this. I just want to read the town charter responsibilities of the Finance Committee, okay? The Finance Committee shall carry out its duties in accordance with the provisions of general law, this charter, and bylaw, and it shall have regular and free access and inspection rights to all the books and accounts of any town department or office. The committee shall carefully examine all budget and appropriations proposals and shall issue its recommendations therein prior to consideration, debate, and vote of the town council. So, in other words, within your purview of your committee charge, and then there's a couple of other sections that go into the budget message and filing reports, and we go through the finance hearings every year. I'm not saying that the charter doesn't say you can't evaluate the economics of a budget proposal, of a development. However, I think the Finance Committee has to be very careful about getting involved in that. I have to just say that the economics of development, the status with what's going on at 444 has happened with every development in Massachusetts in every community in history. So the economics have always been challenging. This issue has been going on for decades. And in terms of what's plowed, what's the police officer, you know, how many police do you need, how many firefighters do you need? And I've said it many times before. What communities have always done and will continue to do is if a development gets approved by a committee, and I just want to make sure the Finance Committee does not make comments on something in the middle of a legal public hearing. A legal public hearing at the ZBA is a very serious issue, and it's also a very serious issue at a planning board level. Those public hearings are there for a reason. That hearing is still open, okay? I anticipate it'll probably be closed in the next couple months. But the economics around development are always confusing. The best you can do is try to do the best we do, like with budget every year. You make estimates on your revenues, you expend expenditures. But the truth of the matter is, it is absolutely impossible to predict how many police officers are going to be needed based on police calls, how many fire calls are going to need, and how many school children may or may not. I have heard an unbelievable amount of rumors that people construe as facts, which are not true. I've heard 250 children are coming to this development. I can tell you that's almost impossible to do. 75% of that development over there are one-bedroom apartments, okay? So just like wherever y'all live, you built a house somewhere and bought a house, you know, you bought a house somewhere, and someone before said, we don't want you here. We don't want that development. We're nervous about roads, traffic, salt, cops, firemen, library, schools. And life went on, and it was just fine. In fact, I think the citizen satisfaction survey said 99% of the public in this community rates the high quality of life we have here. So yet you have a 99% approval of a high quality of life, yet people obviously are concerned, and I'm very respectful of those concerns, but I would just pause to say, if we're going to entertain the Finance Committee looking at development proposals and looking at the economics of it, that is something the Finance Committee should have a discussion about separately. It should be done outside of the public hearing once that closes on the ZBA. And we should have a discussion at some point, Mr. Chairman, if the Finance Committee wants to get into those debates. But those are very difficult to do within the confines of what state law has for planning board and ZBA public hearings. So I just wanted to mention that really quickly. I'm not trying to be difficult with Mark's question, but validating anything that a developer or a resident or elected official or a candidate for office is saying, I don't think is a proper form right now, and that should be a discussion that the Finance Committee takes up at a later date. Thank you.
Any further comments from anyone?
Can I comment on that? I think it is an interesting point. I think there's a lot of hot topics that we may sometimes not address, and I don't know what the avenue is to maybe get some of those topics to somehow cross here. So we can dive in from the financial side of things. Obviously, this is really tricky because it has to go through the proper process first, and then maybe it's too late. So I get it that there is we can't intersperse ourselves in the thing, but I think there is some validity to figuring out how we could potentially, that's probably part of our next topics type of thing, of addressing maybe some of those hot topics and saying, hey, we know this is something, how can we address this or talk about the financials or any of that?
I think the economics of development is a great topic for a deep dive series, right? I think that is a great idea, but at the end of the day, if a proponent goes before the planning board for a project, there's a legal and statutory way at which that goes. And getting the finance committee, which is well outside the purview of the charter responsibilities, and getting in between that means now the finance committee has to now go to a planning board meeting and try to put some scope on that. And I would also say, and I think you should think very clearly, the finance committee charge is very clear. It's not narrow, but it's very clear, and it actually, despite some people saying that you're a rubber stamp, that's not true. Hot topics is a hot topic because it's a hot topic, which means it's a hot political topic, which means people are angry. And I think you have to think long and hard about whether or not you want to wedge yourself as a committee into those planning board and ZBA meetings, because you'll never stop working, because you'll always be going to them, because there's always going to be proposals like Gianetti's Farm or with the cell phone tower up on Pond Street. And then everyone's going to come to you and say, validate what's being said at the planning board, validate this over here, validate this over here. How do you referee what's a hot topic versus a non-hot topic? I mean, it's very subjective. So I think the economics of development is definitely a great topic for the finance committee to talk about, because it does relate to the budget, right? And so I think that's certainly within your purview in terms of the economics of tax levy, new growth, how does development fit into the budget? And I do think there is a tremendous amount of misinformation out there about how development impacts the budget, right? In terms of local receipts. So that, I think, is a great budgetary topic. I think the finance committee's got to think long and hard about whether they're going to get involved in each individual proposal. Thank you.
If I could, so, and just to put it to bed, it sounds like what I'm hearing is your suggestion for the finance committee, which I think probably makes sense, is to be more thoughtful from an approach standpoint, like how are we thinking about it? You know, what makes sense for Franklin, but on a project-specific basis, there are already groups, you know, the ZBA boards, people who should be doing that work, and it's a question of whether those analyses fit with whatever the guidelines, you know, the FinCom agrees with, or not agrees with, but the town generally.
When a proposal goes before the ZBA, a proponent or a planning board or a conservation commission, they're going to generally go through the economics of the proposal. What does it mean for tax base? I think Mark's example is a great one. If you look at Stobart's right now, that 444, it's evaluated, I think assessed at about $1.5 million in property value for about 15 acres. The site at 117 Dean is actually 24 acres. So you're already right off the bat talking about apples and oranges. They are not the same site. They're completely unique characteristics. The acreage is significantly different. The environmental contamination that was on both sites is completely different. And so you're talking about project by project. The ZBA, for those that have watched all the hearings, the proponent has put that in all their materials about what the estimated tax impacts might be. And I think it's just important to realize that you never know. I've been doing this for 28 years. I've been doing this in communities that are a lot more hot potatoes of development than Franklin. I've never seen a proposal come out where an estimate came to reality. So it becomes fear. And it becomes a whole series of other things, emotional factors, quite frankly, that get involved. I can't quantify the financial impacts that may be for somebody that lives on Redgate Lane versus who lives on the other side of town versus somebody's opinion that they like the development versus don't like the development, because all that's going to get wrapped up in bias. And there's a process in which the ZBA has to discuss that with the proponent, and it's the same thing about mitigation, right? So you know, people talk about traffic or school children. Those are not reasons legally to deny a project. They're just factually, legally not. They may be of concerns to people, and that's where the planning board, the Conservation Commission, and the ZBA work with the proponent during a proposal to figure out how do we mitigate those concerns that residents have, as opposed to obstructing and denying the project. Meaning, you could have a buffer concern. Well, the proponent may say, we've heard from 20 residents that say, we don't like the buffer. We're going to see the development. We don't want to see it. Well, the developer then will say, well, I will contribute, I'm making up a number, $40,000 towards shrubs, trees, this kind of species, a fence, to prevent the other party that's in a butter from doing that. I don't know how a finance committee can get in between and validate that during a public hearing process. I also think it's diluting and trying to deviate away from the ZBA's responsibility here. The ZBA is single-handedly responsible for the financial assessment and evaluation and mitigation of that project. The planning board, you know, obviously within their purview, and the Conservation Commission within their purview. So it's something that certainly be done. But I do agree that the economics of development would be a great educational exercise for the community because, you know, I do think there's an inordinate amount of misinformation and theories and hypotheses on our favorite platform, Facebook, that are all fabricated based on emotion and bias, and they are not rooted in any type of actual real reality.
My last comment on that is, you know, I think in the absence of actual information, that's what's going to happen, and we should expect that, anticipate it. So, to your point about a deep dive educational series, perhaps one of them being development, or, you know, there are probably others, probably something worth discussing. Probably makes sense just from a general educational standpoint for the community.
Absolutely, especially with, through Mr. Chairman, especially with new growth, and especially with tax levy, there's no question, because I think what Mark is pointing out is that the old Thompson Press site where 117 Dean Ave was, that was originally assessed at about $2 million, and now it's up to about 75 million in assessment. Well, that's tax base, right? So that's a great example of something that we should do a deep dive on, and we should probably do it at the budget hearings as well. I don't think it can be repeated enough, based on at least some of what goes on my cell phone. You know, it can't be repeated enough as to what those dynamics are and why that's important, you know, to the community. So I think that's a fantastic idea, and I think what Natalie's speaking to is a great idea as well. I really do.
Anything else? We do have one item that we have to take care of, and that's electing the officers for this esteemed committee for the next year. I'll tell you right now, this will be my last year here, so I would like to accept nominations for chairman of the committee from anybody.
Can I nominate you in your last year? Yeah.
Any other? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And now I'd accept nominations for vice chair, and I will take that. Natalie?
Thank you, accept.
I'll second that.
Any others? No? No? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
You want to take the next one?
Yes, the next one is a little bit tricky on the clerk side of things, just because we did kind of a reaching out in advance for people who were interested. It was not done in a group, but it was done one-off. We did receive interest from Lauren, who is not here. So I don't know if we can, I know she would accept, but if we can nominate on her behalf. Is that fine?
Yeah, my choice.
Okay, Norman's.
Happens all the time.
Do I hear a second?
1, 2.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by
Same rules.
saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, you're stuck with us for another year. Approval of minutes from August 11th, 2025. Jamie, I assume that all members can vote even though they were not at the meeting, is that correct?
That is correct.
We were.
You were at, they were at the
Yeah,
meeting.
We were at the meeting.
Okay, that was the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That wasn't.
Mr. Chairman, you were not.
Walk right into that one.
My eyes open. First one I've met since I've been on the committee, though.
Motion to accept the minutes.
Yeah, second.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Resolution recommendation, electric charging station expenditure limit.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick update on this. We've done a couple things on the electric charging stations that you have approved already. We did a bylaw for the fee, and then we did a bylaw because we have to set up a revolving fund. So the funds from the electric charging station will go into a revolving fund, and then that revenue will be used for different electrical type expenses, or if the charging stations need to have repairs. So it'll be very clean, you will see the money going in and why the expenditure is going out, and only for that use. This is the last part of it, and that is to set up the revolving fund. There were some delays in starting the fees, and it began October 1st. So revenue is slowly trickling in, and we'll be collecting revenue and doing a turnover on a monthly basis. So I need to establish a revolving fund on the general ledger.
What is the reference to the 200,000?
So there's an expenditure limit, that's a Mass General Law, Chapter 44, 53 and a half, where we have to set how much we can expense every year. This is also brought up during budget hearings, the senior center, and there's some other revolving funds where we set an expenditure limit.
That 200,000, is that, like, what is that? Is that
We
based on
can't
anything?
spend
Is it just-
any more, we can't expense any more than that limit that is approved.
Do we have any sense of what it typically is?
Yes, yes, we follow it all year long, and we, sometimes we've had to go back and say, we're going to go over,
200,000?
not for this particular one, but other revolving funds, yes. The senior center, activities,
No, but I guess I'm thinking specifically of the electric charging stations, $200,000 limit, that just felt very high. And I was-
so, based on analytics that we've been, because there's this great, now everything has a great dashboard, a great site. Based on the usage for a year was $175,000 we would receive. Now, because we turned off the free and now we're being charged, it's a little, it's
Should be a little
trickling
smaller,
in.
yeah.
But I think that people will realize that we are a lower cost per kilowatt than others around. And if you build it, they will come, so to speak. So I do think that we could see that, and of course, this would go towards, electric bills. So it could be 200,000.
Beneficial.
So, and if
Okay.
we see the need based on, we're constantly monitoring every revolving fund, we would ask for more the next year. If that makes sense. If not, I
Yeah.
can certainly try to clarify.
If it just seems to be trending higher, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I hope it does.
Right.
I make a motion to, is it adopt or recommend? We're recommending.
Recommend.
You're
Recommending
recommending.
the resolution 2567 to add the revolving fund for the electric charging stations.
One second.
Any other questions, comments? Users? No? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Do it next week.
Stabilization account. Is that you too, Terry? or
I
Mr.
just, these don't need any discussion unless members have questions. These are just our quarterly reports on stabilization, budget versus actuals, local receipts, and Evan, our budget director, as he continues to grow into the position he's been at for a year, just trying to give more information about our budget tracker and just more information to the public. So if people have questions, feel free and.
You go first.
I had a question on the sewer usage charges.
Yeah.
I noticed the budget went down dramatically, but the revenue received so far is up. Did we miss budget?
Where are you?
Sorry,
Are
in
you on
the
budget to actuals?
budget versus actuals, like middle of the
that-
first page, sewer usage, it's like just underwater.
Oh, got it. The second, yeah, that's the local receipts.
Oh, local.
Why don't we stick
Yeah.
to stabilization
That's-
funds?
that's
Get
the next.
that
Sorry
out
that
of
we're
the
covering
way.
all those things
and
at
then
the
we'll
same time,
entertain
never
that
mind.
question.
No, it's okay. If you have any questions on stabilization funds,
Yeah.
I have a quick one, hopefully it's easy. is there anything on the horizon? Like somebody's built to something, right? Like Athletic Fields is building to new turf. The fire truck is building to a fire truck. Is anything on the like, we know we're gonna need this in the next 2 to 3?
Read the budget memo, and wait for him.
I'm coming.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say it, I mean, there's gonna be hundreds of millions of dollars in needs that are never gonna be met. Technology's probably up there. I'd say facilities is gonna be another big one, because we've taken a big step back, because we can't really borrow any money. So I would say those two are the biggest two that come to mind, are technology, infrastructure, and facilities. But as we'll get to later, there probably won't be for a while a capital program this year. If you read the fiscal forecast and the budget memo, I think the decisions in front of us with the regular structural budget deficit are gonna occupy all financial needs. Obviously, I think I stand up for every department that all the cuts that have been made over the last 2 years are probably our departmental priorities. I see Jonna shaking her head yes. So, but in terms of long-term planning, Natalie, I would say facilities and technology would be the top two, and then probably infrastructure. But infrastructure obviously has the enterprise funds, and there's some different ways there, but I think those would be the top two.
So those would come out of budget stabilization and general stabilization? The more
General
difficult ones, right?
stabilization is, I refer to it as the Dust Bowl account.
Okay, that's the dust bowl. So it's
That's
really
like,
budget
that's like
stabilization.
rationing,
Okay.
because, again, just to be a little funny, what could go wrong? I don't know, maybe an economic meltdown. I mean, I'd like to believe that many years I was using that in a snarky way, but now that I look at the federal government, I see, a decimation, of a lot of things. So I do call it the Dust Bowl account for a reason, and sadly, 100 years ago, probably that was needed, but that's literally rationing money over a long period of time to like keep the town hall open. The general budget stabilization too, the general stabilization is also a piece of the foundation of our AAA bond rating. I think the ones that you're likely to use on here are athletic fields, although you're not gonna get an athletic field for 1.3 million. I would say that the budget stabilization has done well. That's probably something that will be considered or talked about in the future. And the rest of these will probably remain pretty dormant for a while, other than the MEC stabilization maybe, depending on the regional dispatch center dynamics. I think everything else will probably stay pretty well put until we need emergency funds.
Got it. So even though there's things we know are coming, that Tim's gonna go through, we don't expect to pilfer, like, when we pilfer from them, it's gonna be an emergency.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Got it.
That's a great one, yep.
Okay, understood.
Anyone else?
Yeah, just maybe one quick question on, you mentioned that the general stabilization might be something the rating agency considers when they give us our rating. Do they give any sort of guidance in terms of
Yeah.
what kind of level they would like us to maintain?
Yeah, it's usually about 5% of overall operating budget. And then the same is for the budget stabilization fund. I think the general stabilization now is a little higher than that percentage, so we've always been able to contribute just a little bit to stay on target with that for the rating agencies. The budget stabilization fund that you see on here at 3.37 million, that is a very, very big factor in our ratings report. All of our AAA ratings are on the town website under that section. They cite in there our stabilization fund success for exactly what Natalie said for emergencies. They obviously want to see, it's kind of like what your mom taught you when you were a kid, like put some money away, and save money. And all of these are investment funds, so these have done fairly well performance-wise too. Carrie's done a great job managing those by putting them in high-yield savings accounts when we were at 4.5%. Obviously, we don't know what the Fed's going to be doing soon, but so these actually perform pretty well too. This isn't just taxpayer money going in there. This is investment monies that we've been doing pretty well on for a while too. So they recommend 5%, and they recommend about 3% of the budget stabilization, and we're at about, I think, 2.5%. So we're right around ballpark. We also have a financial policy on that we usually update every 2 years based on our, we get input from our ratings agencies about how our financial policies could be bettered, and we usually bring those to the finance committee. It's usually an annual goal for the council, to do, so the finance committee will review that probably in the winter at some point in 3 or 4 months.
Okay.
Anything else? I have 2 questions. Are the water sewer trash funds included in the 5% number that you just quoted?
No,
No, those
So
are
they're
enterprise, sorry.
Separate items?
no, it's just the general operating. They don't include the enterprise funds.
And the other question is on open space. Is the drop roughly a little under $2 million? Is that Schmidt Farm? Or-
No, that was the last section of the SNET Trail from Grove Street to the Franklin Crossing neighborhood,
Okay.
which I should be closing on next week. So Carrie's already made the assumption wisely to draw down that money, so hopefully that'll be closing and that'll be owned by the town of Franklin next week.
Any other questions on stabilization? Moving on to the local receipts enterprise, I think you guys started a question down there. Yes?
Yeah, I had a question on the sewer line item.
So, that's a great question, Ryan, thank you. I'm gonna take it and look back at it, we are very conservative on when we do this, our local receipts, so I just wanna check that because it's usually level. And that might be, you know, where we ended on June 30th. So I will take a look at that and get back to you on it, I just wanna see why as well.
Okay. Yeah, there are a few on here I noticed that follow that same trend where we like reduced our budget,
Yep,
but the current, received through is higher than it was.
we're very conservative on this every year,
Okay.
yeah, so. Evan, do you want any, am I missing anything?
He's not listening.
Yeah, he is.
Oh, Aaron.
I'm not sure. We can look at it and get back to you.
Thank you.
Anything else? And then the,
Oh, actually, sorry, can I just add
You
to that
may.
a little bit? I'm sorry, Ryan, I do have a better explanation of that. So every year to the Department of Revenue, we have to submit our numbers, and we cannot submit a number that we didn't hit last year. You can't say, you know, with, for example, motor vehicle excise, we put in 5.9. I can't go to DOR this year and say, we're gonna get 6.5 million, and they're gonna say, no way, you only got 5.9 the year before. So that's what I kinda mean by conservative. We can't estimate more than what we received the prior year.
Okay.
And I know that we're already hitting it out of the ballpark on some areas, but, so that's why we kinda do different categories have a different amount, and we kinda balance it out.
So that makes sense. I just
Okay.
I think it was the budget drop on sewer that caught my
Yep,
eye.
and we will look at that, I will
Yeah.
definitely look back at
That
that.
one was more significant than most.
Okay,
Is it the Interceptor?
we haven't started paying,
No.
so, we'll take a look at it.
you guys set?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, sorry, I just had an idea.
Next page is the various, what is this?
Fees?
Fees coming in. Any questions on the fees? Looks pretty straightforward. And then the last one is target percentage through the first quarter, I assume, versus the year. Some of them are real timing issues, like Tri-County. I would guess you do an assessment, that was a big number.
Mhm.
You do an assessment to get them going and then through
Yeah.
the year.
Sure.
It may not be exact quarters.
Yeah, some departments, you know, their encumbrances will show that they've already exceeded the 25% because they have encumbered money for projects that are coming up. Also, some departments have to pay a lot at the beginning of the quarter. You know, they have to pay for their subscriptions. You know, the assessor's office has to do a lot of their expenses right in July. I'm not sure if Tim as well, he pays a lot of.
Majority of.
A majority of
budget
them are the first
run
of
in
the
July.
fiscal year, so they've already expensed their budget.
I apologize because I didn't get a chance to review this in advance, so I'm just kind of reviewing it on the fly.
Uh-huh.
Is there anything that is like because some is like, okay, sure, like, I just saw somebody who was like almost 100% encumbered, and it's like, okay, yeah, solid waste disposal, maybe that's how they operate, great. But benefits, we're at 68, is that really truly a monthly cost, and we are that far? Is there any real red flags in this in terms of, like real trend, it's not just a timing issue?
No, not yet,
Okay,
not yet.
great.
But we are gonna be looking at, some, I would say more, in the third quarter is really when we start to say, okay, this salary on this department, what's going on? Did they, or did they have savings because somebody is no longer there and we haven't filled the position? This is where we start looking at those type of trends. And facilities with expenses of everything going on with all the buildings, something could happen, right, to a building and, they wiped out their expense budget. And we were like, okay, what are we gonna do here? Do we have to go before the finance committee and explain all this and make a transfer?
Okay, great.
Would it be possible to add to this
Yeah.
in the future, the percent that you had at this time last year? Because then that would answer like a bunch of the, hey, you always just spend,
Yeah.
all of it in day one and then it's
Yeah.
done, or.
Sure, so you
That'd
can
be
see
great.
that trend.
Because I saw this, there's like a whole bunch of these
Yeah,
reds,
that's
and you're
the
like, this has gotta be,
Right.
I just pay my bill in August and it's done, or in September and like it's done for the year.
No,
I think
nope,
that
that
would be
makes
super-
perfect sense. See, so we know what the trend is.
Sure, yeah.
So
just-
thank
yeah.
you for bringing that up, and we will do that going forward.
That would be fantastic,
Okay.
thank you.
Mhm.
Anything else, guys? Budget updates, Mr. Administrator?
Yeah, I just, I put this out there just because people have a lot of comments, they have a lot of theories, they have a lot of commitments that prove to me that there's a lot of people in the town that have not read anything. That's very concerning for me, because if you read what I wrote, you should be not quiet about it. So I just put it on here to answer any questions. I know it was in August, so maybe people missed it. I'm giving people the polite courtesy that it was summer. I also did want to highlight on here a report that the Mass Municipal Association put out called The Perfect Storm. The good news is we're getting some momentum around this. I'm actually testifying with the governor and lieutenant governor on Tuesday for the Municipal Empowerment Act, which would benefit us. Actually, Max Morangello would love that bill because it has a senior means tax exemption in that legislation. The town council did vote 9-0 to support that legislation. It would also give us the option for a 1% hotel tax increase, which would be another about $200,000 in our coffers when the World Cup is coming next year. So Senator Roush is holding that hearing at her, yeah, I just have to remind the president it's not Boston, but there are towns out here like Foxborough and Plainville and Franklin that have a lot of hotels that are going to be fully booked up, and we'd like the rest of the folks around the world to pay that extra 1% to our community. It also has a little bit of a bump in the meals tax, and there's a whole bunch of other procurement things and geeky things that we love about raising procurement thresholds, which would streamline our procurement office and a whole variety of other stuff. The senior means tax exemption is a big deal, but the Perfect Storm report shows the post-pandemic reality of cities and towns. I think we've heard the story. I know a lot of people in Franklin think somehow it's like, unique to us. It is not. I would cite in there the town of Easton had a failed override this year, and now they have fewer staff members in Easton than they did in 1990. So 35 years ago, the town of Easton had more people working for the town than they do today. I think everybody knows in 35 years the town has grown quite a bit. I think Franklin's in the same boat. This report is really well done. It shows that as state coffers have gone way up, state aid has basically flatlined, particularly unrestricted general government aid, UGA. And so if people have the time, please take a look through it. It's a great statewide snapshot. And this is going to help us hopefully lay the groundwork towards a campaign early next year with the legislature to try to rally all of the municipalities and school districts. We had a great meeting with the schools today about this, revolving around state aid flatlining, but also the costs around healthcare that are coming up. I don't think if anybody's in Medicare open enrollment right now, you know, Mr. Conley, people are seeing 50, 55, 65% premium increases because of the federal disruption. The big beautiful bill is not turning out to be so beautiful. It's being basically how to destroy America bill. And it's serious. Healthcare is going to bankrupt Massachusetts. This is a very serious issue. We'll be talking about this over the next couple months. We're going to take some urgent actions, I think, in November that we are working with our unions and working with the schools on. We've got actually a unified strategy with our school district. But people should really read this memo. People should really look at the forecast, look at the prognosis, and if you're not concerned, you haven't read it. This isn't a joke. This isn't Jamie being whatever people want to call me. This is serious stuff. You could see irreparable harm to your town services in your school district. And by the way, we have 38 more months of what DC is looking like, and that's if we have an election. And so people really should stop blowing this off and really pay attention to what's going on. You know I'm going to be the straight shooter, and I'm going to tell it like it is. Whether you like me or you don't like me is not really the point, and I say that intentionally because I know people want to make up a lot of information. I'm telling you the straight truth, and I know there's a lot of other gaslighters in the community that want to make up other stuff and try to pretend that it's someone else's fault or this, that, or the other thing. Those conversations are very damaging to this community, and they're very damaging to our staff. And when 72% of your budget is public education, let's be real, at some point, it's going to hurt public education. So for school stakeholders out there that think this is like some other blame game, this is serious stuff. I'm talking about closing the senior center in the next few years, the library. You're talking about possible millions of cuts to the school district that'll do irreparable harm. We've already heard from the police and fire chief about the dire nature of the budget crisis with even police and fire and the call volume. I put in there a series of recommendations that are real. And these are the choices. There will probably be others as well, but these are some of the early choices that'll be looking at the town. I've said there very likely may not be a capital program this year, which means no cruisers, no sped vans, no police and fire safety equipment, no curriculum updates, no facilities improvements, because we're probably going to need all of our free cash to withstand the pain of healthcare and budget cuts. So this is going to be a long budget season. If you thought last year was long, this year is going to be much longer. And I appreciate, because I keep looking over at her for a bit of hope. I appreciate Jonna being here tonight and being a partner in all of this. This is going to be a tough year. So happy to answer any questions anybody has.
I actually have a question/comment
Yeah.
about the memo, which I read,
Yeah.
which was fantastic. I agree. But it struck me that there was a chart that showed how, and it really highlighted that Massachusetts is pretty well below average in state aid
Yeah.
that's given to the towns. So, not getting into the blame game situation, but it didn't seem, unless I misread the memo, it didn't seem that there wasn't the money to be had. It was the money not being allocated to the towns. So I'm wondering if either A, I read that wrong, or B, what are our state representatives, what are our town local representatives asking about why Massachusetts, such a wealthy town, or state rather, is that money seems to be caught up somewhere else and doesn't seem to be getting the money that we pay in taxes, the money that we filter up, doesn't seem to be getting back down to the communities, and I wonder why Massachusetts is that way.
You are 100% correct in your assessment. You read it completely accurately. And I think you're spot on. I think one of the dynamics that's been there is that either the need or the lobbying, and I don't mean that from a negative lobbyist perspective, but I think one of the things that the legislature has, and the governor have done exceptionally well in the last few years is they've spread the money around to more stakeholders, right? So as the spectrum of interests and the spectrum of priorities has widened, more people in different groups and different services have been requested. And so I think the legislature and governor have said, geez, maybe 20 years ago you had, I'm making this up, say 1,000 different groups out there looking for resources. Well, now there's like 2,000, right? So they've been spreading the money around, I think, probably more equitably, giving everybody a slice of the pie, right? So no one's kind of left out. And I think that's one of the dynamics as to why, despite all of our lobbying efforts from the school associations and school groups and the MMA and maybe other municipal groups, there hasn't been as much of a money focused on what I would, basically, back to basics, right? Public education, infrastructure, public safety, and maybe, you look at like cultural resources like a library or senior center, stuff like that. So, free community college is an example. That's a great idea. I think the metrics can show a lot of yield from those resources, right? Just as an example, I'm not trying to pick on community colleges, by the way, I'm just saying. But that costs, whatever it is in the budget, $100 million, I'm making that up, just don't quote me. So that $100 million is going towards free community college. It may be a worthwhile effort, but I think at the expense of teachers, firefighters, public officials that we have all heard, for our police, fire, and teachers have all said we're in the bottom 25% of our area of being paid, right? So I think also, and we've talked about this often, and the hold harmless the financial situation revolving around the schools, right? Our local contribution in the Chapter 70 formula has not maintained locally with where it needs to be in state law. So I think there's a shared responsibility, but I do think since the pandemic, there's been a lot more requests for services, whether it's social services, whether it's political priorities, whether it's community college. I think there was another one with, you used to have free and reduced school lunch, but then the pandemic happened, there was ARPA funds to fund that, and then when the ARPA funds from the federal government dried up, state government said, well, we're gonna patch that gap and we're still gonna continue with that, right? I think you see that since the pandemic, DPH gave out hundreds of millions of dollars in ARPA funds that are in the state budget for regionalization, and we'll talk about that during budget season a little bit more. That money's gonna dry up, and those monies are not gonna be available, and so the state is gonna have to make some pretty serious choices over the next 3 years. You look at all the incentives from green energy, those are gonna dry up from the federal government, right? That's gonna force the hand of state government to try to finance that. And while most people probably are paying close attention, our governor and lieutenant governor and everybody have been very, very forthright and out there. I think maybe they need to be a little louder about, what's coming down from the federal government. I think what's been happening with healthcare is certainly gonna play our hand. But I think ultimately what you'll see in the next few years, I hope, is that our state legislature and governors start going back to basics and start talking about the fundamentals at the local level. And I think that's a big reason why state aid is flattened off, right? You talk about Chapter 70, it's $150 per pupil. That's a record-setting amount, but it's not enough to cover the costs of what we're talking about at the local level, right? You look at state aid with UGA, and certainly I know grants and a variety of other sources for schools. It's generally flatlined. So that chart you're pointing out is probably one of the most important charts in that entire packet, where you look at other states and we're in the middle of the pack. We're not even really at the high, we're at the, I was trying to be, we're at the low end of how much we're taking out of our state budget and distributing it to really what is the front line of what most people experience with government, right? Most people experience all of the services we provide. So I'm glad that you read all that and you were spot on with your analysis of exactly what that chart meant.
Just one more thing. I think it would be interesting to look at the other states where you say there was 1,000 things. I think that was a great example, right? There's 1,000 things and now there's 2,000 things. I have a hard time believing that Massachusetts is the only one, or the lower end of these states were the only ones that were also asked for those 2,000 things. So what did the other states that are prioritizing, maybe putting, there's only so much money, right? I know that we don't really, inflation means that we don't really have any actual dollar values to anything, but money is real and money is finite. So is our state prioritizing that spend over other states who seem to have town aid at maybe presumably a higher in the rankings? Who's above us? Who's of that 2,000 that's getting the money before we do? Because it is money is a finite resource.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious to see how
I'll take that back to the MMA I mean, there's probably a whole nother
Don't say I
commission
said
study,
that.
but I think that's a great question. It's digging, like peeling the onion back on that fact a little bit more. Do those other states, Vermont, right, which is 1 million people, we're 6.5, do they have that same spectrum of need? They probably do. I think maybe those states just operate differently and have made different choices.
And
I think that's where you're going with
suggesting,
that.
could we try to prioritize
Yeah.
what we need over what we want?
Well, that is a conversation between the elected officials and our state legislators. Ultimately, that's a conversation the community here and the folks that are coming into the room need to have with Representative Roy and Senator Roush, before next year's election in November, right? And I think that's a conversation probably that's going to come up during the gubernatorial debate as well. And I think those are really, really good points.
If I could just, excuse me, if I could just follow up Shannon's excellent question. My question is, I just want to make sure I'm thinking about this the right way. The whole harmless funds that we get right now from the state, according to the formula, we're getting right now somewhere between 12 and 13 million more than we should. So, agreed that we are, that there may be a need to prioritize. My concern and the risk I think that we run into is if they do go back to basics and just kind of look at where they're spending it, Franklin is probably more at risk than other communities of losing that excess 12 or 13 million that we have today. So that's your point is absolutely right. But that's the one thing that does concern me about it.
We are, because Boston is at like 45 million, but I don't need anybody to tell me Boston has an unbelievable amount of money stashed away in a million different places. I mean, they could just build one building in downtown Boston, have a renovation, and they're gonna get that on a building permit, right? I mean, it's a little bit of exaggeration, but that's why I think the risk to Franklin is significant, and I think the bigger risk is that you're 0 for 2 on overrides in the last 2 years. So the 2 opportunities you've had to make a dent in that issue, this is a grassroots problem, single-handedly. 100% a grassroots problem of this community to be able to get out a coalition of individuals into the community to talk about these issues that you're pointing out, which are spot on. So I think if Boston loses their hold harmless, by the way, just not to freak people out, I mean, you're still a couple years away from them debating the formula. But, as I've said for 10 years, and my predecessor said for 15 years, and I know Steve has covered all of these meetings for a long time, hate to break the news to everybody, it ain't Jamie Hellen and Jeff Nutting and Maureen Sabolinsky and Sarah Hearn and Lucas Jagir. We've been epically clear about this for a very long time, well before I got here. Tim knows this, the experienced department heads know this. But you're already 0 for 2 when we know what third strike is. So you don't have a lot more opportunities, but the problem is unquestionably a grassroots coalition problem of being able to go out and talk about a very complicated problem and what that risk is. I think a lot of people for a little while, kind of snubbed the nose at me, oh yeah, Jamie's talking about whole harmless or whatever. And I've made jokes at meetings you've seen about being best friends with Mayor Wu. I don't politic a little bit on this stuff. I'm serious. Like, I talk to Michelle Wu for a reason, because her best friend is the chair of House Ways and Means, and Representative Roy also is in leadership. These are serious relationships that have to be cultivated, because if we're going to withstand hold harmless in any Chapter 70 revision, it ultimately has to be done in a formula place. And as somebody who's been in the room when you negotiate Chapter 70, I was there in 2006, that created hold harmless. When you have these kind of fiscal pressures coming on the municipalities in the report that Shannon was referencing, Do you think the town of Needham, that has an increased enrollment in student enrollment, cares about Franklin? No, they're gonna fight for their revenue because they're seeing a spike in enrollment. So their legislators are gonna go in there and say, hey, Franklin, what'd you do? Oh, you're 0 for 2 on overrides? Oh, you tried, but your voters didn't want to do it, so I guess the voters want to make cut. But I got to fight for my district, and I got to make sure that my district, I think Rep. Roy and Senator Rush were clear when they were here on September 3rd, they're going to fight for our district. But it depends on how many towns have declining enrollment, hold harmless problems versus how many do. And that's a negotiation if there's ever a Chapter 70 formula rewrite that they're going to do. So this is a serious issue, and this is a big issue that I think, you know, a lot of folks in the community have to get out there and talk to other citizens about what that risk is.
Sorry, I put us all in a downer there.
Max.
Max Marangello, 127 Central Park Terrace. I had a question about the famous account 300. I saw this chart and the documents over here around, I don't know if where's the camera? Around, it's not irrelevant. It was a 3.8% increase for count 300, which is the schools. But I want to point out that that number also includes health insurance that is actually broken out in the municipal side of the budget into a separate line item. So I was just curious if you take out health insurance, what the assumption would be for the school, the chapter 300 or account 300, and inversely, if you just look at the municipal side of the budget and project, including health insurance as it goes out, what percentage that would be going forward in the assumptions?
So we're assuming in the benefits budget on the municipal side, 14% on healthcare. That will be higher by the time we get out of this after this bloodbath down in DC. And Jana is also assuming 14% in that account, within account 300. I think from some calculation last year, if you took healthcare out of the school budget, which I'm a proponent of, I agree with Paul Griffith and Ruth Ann O'Sullivan, who brought that issue up last year. I agree with them. I think we should put it in one account. I think Jana estimated 3% would be the assumption, roughly?
Between 2.6 and 2.8%.
So Jana, school business administrator, is saying 2.6 to 2.8. So that assumption then in 300 would be 2.628. And then, but just to be clear, because I know this is going to happen, that account 300 is going to be deducted about 10 million. So don't try to think you're keeping that number and giving me 10 million. That's not going to work, right? Because I know there's going to be a few people who are going to try to be cute about that. But you deducted 10 million because you have to take healthcare and any other benefit, dental insurance, like anything else Jana puts in her budget has to be deducted to put it. But I'm a proponent of that. I agree with Ruth Ann and Paul, and I think we've had conversations today, and we hope to have an answer for the public about whether the school department wants to do that. We hope to have that answer on November 19th.
My concern is just that it doesn't seem like an apples-to-apples comparison when it's put before the public.
We agree,
The
Max.
other question I have is just a small question. With the school resource officers, it says that you have $200,000 towards the school resource officers, but I think that's only a portion of the responsibility. I think they do other things as well with the senior center and in the community. So I was just curious why that whole, those two FTEs were being put entirely towards the schools.
Good question. I think there's four SROs, or there were. Is there 2 now?
There's 2.
Yeah. So I think we've cut programs, like we've cut the Halloween party. I think I think it's in the community services division for the police department, and I think they've reallocated. I don't think the cuts are just to the school resource officer being in the building. They're still doing work, but we have cut a variety of other things that those SROs would have done. Excuse me, community service officers would have done for the town in terms of other outreach and things like the Halloween party. And I think the chief has explained this pretty clearly. I just don't want to mince words with him, but the chief has talked about this at almost every budget meeting for the last year. So
No, I'm not necessarily talking about the cuts. I'm talking about how they're counted versus school side versus town side.
well, they're all in the police department budget. They're not in the school
Yeah,
budget
but wasn't
at all.
there a document in here, like what's counted towards the schools and what's counted towards the town? Am I making that
Oh,
up?
yeah, that's for net school. That's for our net school spending report.
Yeah, so I was curious as to that, like why are you counting 2 whole officers when they're only doing part
Because
of
there's
that?
2 officers there.
the whole time?
Yeah.
So they're not doing other stuff outside of the school?
No, they are, but there used
Okay.
to be 4, but now there's 2.
Okay, so is this number current in here?
No, that was, we're in the middle of this fiscal
Oh.
year. We'll do the report at the end, in next June, July and August and September. Evan and Jana will produce the net school spending actuals for this year.
Okay.
For the following year, so you're a year delayed.
Okay, so then it will show a reduction by half?
Right,
Okay,
right.
thank you.
Well, no, because they're still there.
Oh.
But I'll talk to you about that later on.
Any other questions? Tim,
Take us away.
um,
Calgon.
can you
10
do it
minutes.
in, can you do it in 11 minutes, or shall we do it next meeting?
No, let's
No,
go through it.
11 minutes?
no.
You can just,
We're gonna delay the tech presentation again. But I'm sure Tim will have fine pearls of wisdom, maybe enhanced for next time.
can you do a little bit, just to
I'd
wet the
rather
whistle?
not. It can be a lot of questions for it with it as well, so I don't really want to rush through it.
All right.
Are we, because we have to start the other meeting on time? Or could be here all night, I think is the other probably
I
concern.
think we're gonna probably be here all night anyway, but, or at least I will be.
I just want to be respectful of your time, Tim. I appreciate
Sure,
that we've
Tim.
done this a couple of times, so
Right.
apologies that.
So the next finance committee is scheduled November 5th. It's not far away. Just putting it out.
Yeah, I recommend
Personally,
we.
I'd rather have a full presentation that we can pound you with questions.
I feel the same.
So, why don't
I
we,
welcome them.
It's been nice having you sitting there and catching up on emails and
You
stuff.
learned a few
I
things.
learned a lot, yeah.
I think so did everyone in this room. So that's the important part. Council, wrong place. Finance committee, any comments? All right, what I'm gonna do is I'll send you an email sometime this week asking you for suggestions for future agenda items. Future Tims, if you're new on the committee, we've done what has affectionately been called the Bill Down Deep Dive Series. We do it pretty consistently. Bill was a previous chairman. We bring groups, like groups of departments in, and we'll have a slightly new format this year that Natalie's come up with. But we just don't have time to do justice to Tim. So anybody comments of any kind?
I just want to reiterate something Jamie brought up earlier, because based on what we're hearing in town, a deep dive series around real estate financing, or just how that works, just feels like something it would be folly not to cover.
I agree. Okay, we will add that to the list. Anybody else? Accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right.